Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with some more Warhammer 3 reveals. We've already had a look at Nurgle and his forces with Korgoth, but now we look towards Tzeentch, the Changer of Ways, and his forces led by Kairos Fateweaver. This is of course another showcase to show off all the different mechanics within Kairos' campaign, and to show you why Kairos and his forces present a unique campaign when playing as the Oracles of Tzeentch. As always, everything that you do see here right now is early access and in development, so anything that you do see could get changed by the time that the game gets released on February 17th. But with all that being said, let's not waste any more time and jump right in. Kairos' campaign begins in the northern Chaos Wastes. So far up north, you're actually very close to the Great Bastion itself. You'll notice that you're surrounded by a myriad of different enemies, mostly Cathayan, but to the south of you, you do have ogres and you do have Cornate warriors. Just at the start of your campaign, you're already very close to the Storm Dragon Miao Yin, and pretty much surrounded at all sides. It very much depends on where you want to go, though being aggressive doesn't really hurt. Your choice is to move eastward or westward, and if you want a lot of fighting, I've been going pretty much straight for Cathay as soon as I start. Kairos' faction effects is known as Keeper of the Destiny Scrolls and has the following benefits: enemy reinforcement time prediction accuracy plus 100%. This means that you can have a faster fight if you can just get in there quickly and deal with the main army so the reinforcements don't come in. On the other hand, your own battle reinforcements time is minus 50%, so your own armies will come a lot quicker. And finally, hero action success chance plus 15% for all characters, useful if you're trying to send in a few cultists into a few different areas and possibly sow some chaos. And as you can tell, all faction effects work around manipulation, which obviously is something that you would expect from the Oracles of Tzeentch. Kairos' own unique trait is known as Oracle and offers the following benefits: can unlock unique items that can be used to customize Kairos' spell selection, more on that in just a second. Enemy hero action success chance minus 50%. And ambush defense chance plus 50% for Lord's army. Already you've got pretty good defenses against ambushers and even enemy heroes. This is going to make it easier for you to move around the map. And before we jump onto anything else, you can also see that Kairos already starts with a few spells unlocked, with the Blue Fire of Tzeentch being unlocked to its fullest potential. This makes him a very potent spellcaster at the very beginning of the game, and will keep on getting stronger and stronger as you can spend skill points where you need them. So now let's start focusing towards the skills. Most of them will be as expected, like for example boosting up your troops and getting some magic. However, the bottom skill line is more or less the same, but different at the same time, as it focuses mostly around the Changing of Ways mechanic and also some basic administration. The Changing of the Ways is something that you're going to be using a lot as a Tzeentchian faction. We'll be getting to that soon enough, but you will see here that you can reduce its cost and also its cooldown. That's something which will become highly beneficial to you in the future, especially as you start making use of it more and more. The skill line above obviously focuses around the usual, buffing up your troops, making them more viable, stronger, and so on, which is needed despite the fact that yes, Kairos has a lot of different skill lines. You're gonna need to try and, well, budget. As you can expect, your main magic law is the Law of Tzeentch, which you already have full skill points in there just from beginning your campaign. The Law of Tzeentch is fairly powerful, and it's got a lot of damaging style spells. It really much depends on how you want to use the character. As you see, they've taken inspiration from his tabletop version and have added in a new mechanic just for him. This is where you can see the 8 battle laws being represented in a skill line below, where you'll be able to change some of your spells out for some of the spells from the Law of Beasts, the Law of Fire, the Law of Heavens. All of the 8 battle laws are represented, but you'll only get 2 spells. You will notice, however, that there is a second point, and that second point will get you access to their basic passive ability too, so that means that you can mix and match. It works as an item system, and really it's more focused around what you want to do, what spells seem the best. This is why I said earlier that budgeting is going to help, as you won't be able to get every single spell. Mind you, this will start bringing in some reason to have some replayability, unless you of course use a mod in the future. Though I will say from personal experience that you don't really need to switch around to the other laws. This is just from my playthroughs so far. I've noticed that the Law of Tzeentch is powerful enough as it is, so you don't really have to go for different spells unless you want variety, of course. Kairos will also get his own unique skill line, which has a variety of different benefits, as it can focus on increasing his own barriers during battle, which obviously helps, drastically reducing miscast base chance, a massive bonus here which is barrier replenishment delay and barrier replenishment rate plus 25% for both in Lord's army, which means that his army is going to be fairly tanky throughout the whole campaign, and also increasing Winds of Magic power reserve, physical resistance too, and some other benefits like, for example, extra barrier, once again, plus 20% for Lord's army, and making spells cheaper too. There's a lot of benefits just from the basic line, and from what I've seen from my own personal playstyle, you can get a bunch of Lords of Change and just fire spells constantly. It's kind of hilarious, to be honest. And I mean that in a fun way, especially if you start bringing in other modifiers in too. So technology is focused around a few things. As you can see, there's many diverging points. Not only does it cost time, but it also costs Grimoires, which we'll discuss in a second. Now, as it stands, there are 5 different branches, with the first one already be unlocked, so you can already work through it. Each branch is then split into 9 different technologies per section, and you can work around. They've all got different variants, they've all got different bonuses, they've all got something which is of value in all honesty. So I'm going to let it play now so you can just see it. I'll be panning through all of them, and then we'll be back in just a second. Kairos' starting army is fairly strong for what it is. 3 units of blue horrors, meaning that you've got some basic range and obviously basic melee, a unit of pink horrors for better range and a bit better melee, the Burning Chariot of Tzeentch to zoom around the enemy and do some damage, some Chaos Furies of Tzeentch, which aren't great but useful at the very beginning, and finally a Soul Grinder of Tzeentch for some long range damage but also very potent melee stuff too. Construction for Tzeentchian factions will be pretty much normal compared to, say for example, Nurgle, which we've already shown off. Here everything is quite standard with basic military and advanced military, and you will notice that pretty much all of the units can be found on 4 different buildings, except for the Soul Grinder, which is left by himself. Sad times. With that, you've got 2 different provincial capitals. This depends on the area that you're at, where it could be more demon focused or more mortal focused. A landmark which every single Chaos faction seems to be able to get at the very beginning, and then obviously your defensive buildings and your infrastructure. Infrastructure itself is as follows, you know, the usual growth, public order stuff. Also, one of your infrastructure buildings is quite good in generating grimoires passively, which you will need for the changing of the ways mechanic. So we've mentioned it a lot, so let's talk about it. Grimoires are a new mechanic only available to Tzeentchian factions. This is a new currency, and it's tied to a bunch of different things, as you can see. You can gain them from battles, buildings, characters, events, looting, sacking and raising settlements, technology, and even unholy manifestations. But you can use them on the changing of the ways, events, and technology. So as you can see, the currency itself is quite important and is tied throughout your whole campaign. It's not very difficult to start getting, and it won't be difficult to generate throughout your campaign passively, but you will need to focus on certain things to be able to get it at a decent pace, especially if you want to work throughout your technology tab. What I would say is putting some focus on it early on will be very, very helpful. This is from my own personal experience, as the last thing you want to do is be in need of it and not be able to progress through your technology because you forgot to start gaining this. I found myself in a weaker position because I had spent most of my Grimoires on the Changing of the Ways mechanic. Yeah. Defeating enemy armies as a Tzeentchian faction will give you the option of either increasing your Winds of Magic power reserve, which is absolutely amazing, or the usual basic replenishment, or selling them off for money. Winds of Magic, very, very useful, especially if you've got a lot of spellcasters and you're trying to get as much damage outdone as possible, though trust me, don't get like me and become greedy. Yeah, I'm just pretty much just showing off all my flaws here. From there, it's time to start progressing into the campaign. It's important to keep recruiting, keep in mind that your units are squishy, and when you start dealing with loads of enemy factions, you're going to want to start being able to have some forces to back you up. You're not going to have a lot of good options at the beginning, but blue horrors, despite being a low tier unit, are pretty strong. Kairos, like the other monogod factions, will have access to unholy manifestations, and these are dependent on your global Tzeentchian corruption, so all the other Tzeentch factions are helping you with getting to your goal here. The first one you can do without having any corruption out there, which is stopping an enemy army from moving for 2 turns but getting 250 Grimoires as a reward, which is quite beneficial, believe me, it's quite good. The second will stop an enemy army in their tracks and give them attrition regardless of their immunities. This can be very helpful if you're being sieged and you need them to be weakened down a little bit. The third increases barrier hit points by 25% and range by 20%, which is pretty good considering that you have decent range on your units so far, plus the barrier will make sure that they're a little bit tankier. The final one will stop army movement for 3 turns, but upon completion you're going to get a lot of bonuses. Winds of Magic power reserve plus 15 per turn, control minus 50 on a local enemy province, and Tzeentchian corruption plus 25 on a local province. This is very, very helpful if you're trying to keep corruption up, or if you're just trying to paint the map blue, because you can with corruption. If you've got a certain amount of corruption, you'll paint the map to your specific god. Now, we've spoken about Changing of the Ways a lot, so let's actually talk about the mechanic. You see, it's got a lot of different uses, but at the very beginning you'll only be able to get transfer settlement. Yep, you can change settlements without having to pay for it and so on. So here I'm just showcasing it off. There's a Chaos faction which is in my region, and I don't want to fight them just yet, especially as my units are fairly weak, and I can just perform it for a rather large number of Grimoires. This is also why I said it's so important, and there we go, it's simple as that. However, it is important to note that if there's an army stationed inside the settlement, they will move aside. This is always good to know when you're dealing with stuff like enemy armies and so on. As far as I've tested, the settlement will also stay at the level that you've been able to get it at, so if it was level 2, it should stay at rank 2 and so on, but you won't be able to do this a lot as there is a cooldown, so it's not as horrendously broken as you think. You could also use it to, well, boost up an ally if you want to. It just really depends on how you want to use the mechanic. Obviously, that's not everything that you can do with Changing of the Ways. There's so much more to it. You can break alliances, which, if you're dealing with an order tide in the future, that is obviously going to be quite helpful. You can hold faction armies, you can track their armies, you can even reveal their intentions, reveal their territories, raise a rebellion there, open the gates so you can easily just get into a fight and have the gates open, give them a war coordination target, or even force factions to declare war on each other, which is going to be very, very useful. The fact is that you're going to need a lot of Grimoires. They can get quite expensive depending on what you're using, but it does give you a lot of variety. There is cooldowns involved also, so it's not that overpowered. But if you know the lore of Tzeentch and you want to have a campaign where you can just play with people's heads, make them all your pawns and see what you could do, well, this is the campaign for you, definitely. The thing is, of course, as you can see, they are mostly tied, well, barring one of them, which is what you already have, they're all tied to technology, which means that you'll have to also spend some Grimoires there too. This is why I said that this resource was so important, because you're going to use it in so many things, especially what makes the campaign itself unique for the Oracles of Tzeentch. It's also good to note that the Tzeentchian faction that starts right next to Miao Yin is your ally from the very start of the game. You'll be in a military alliance with them from the very beginning, so if you want to use them, especially with the diplomacy rework, which I will be highlighting in a video with all the different changes and so on, this will become your foothold in a sense into Grand Cafe. As long as they're dealing with the other factions as you're working your way in, you shouldn't have too much of an issue. As you can see, the diplomacy stuff is rather varied, and I'd rather have its own separate video there, as there's so much to discuss. I don't want to take away from Tzeentch as a whole, but I have noticed that it is worth it more or less to become an ally at this point if you want some extra flavor to your campaigns, and it's not so soul-destroying as it was in Warhammer 1 and Warhammer 2. Your generic lord options are the Heralds of Tzeentch, where you're able to choose from either the Law of Tzeentch or the Law of Metal. Both laws themselves are quite powerful and good at dealing damage. It's very much dependent on your playstyle and what you personally prefer. Now, when it comes to skills, you'll have the two at the bottom which are focused around your administration stuff and boosting up your units. You'll have nothing boosting up your melee damage and so on, but then again, you know you're a Tzeentchian demon, you don't really need that. But everything is more or less as you can expect, so there's not a lot to be explaining there. Now, you do have access to two mount options, the Disc of Tzeentch and the Burning Chariot. Both are flying mounts, but very different. One will focus around moving around quickly, while the other one can be used in melee, and you've also got access to the Locust stuff. So, like every other Herald, and pretty much every generic demon hero for the monogods, you'll have access to Locust abilities, but you can only choose one. This means that as you recruit more and more lords, you can have fun and try out the different ones. I would say all of them are quite useful, so you're not really missing out, and it gives you incentive to recruit more armies. However, if you do want all the Locust abilities in the same army, you can start recruiting some iridescent horrors, which are the hero version of the Heralds. You can decide either the Law of Tzeentch or the Law of Metal, and as you can see, the skills will work the same mounts too. Obviously, the skills in the lower part are different, as you can use them as agents and so on, but given the fact that these are quite powerful, especially with your chosen laws, being able to fly around and all that too, you would rather want these in your armies. You can spread corruptions by other means and not have to worry about using a hero, which is very valuable as a servant of sorts. When capturing a full province, you will have access to commandments, as you can expect. Some of them are very powerful, for example, one of which increases your research rate by 10%, and we'll get to a little bit of a reason why that's so strong soon enough. Well, barring the obvious, this is going to increase your research time and so on, you can spread corruption and so on, but this, I feel, is the main one because of a few reasons later on in the campaign. But before that, we can talk about cults. You see, Chaos cults will start forming in areas where there's high Chaos corruption, more specifically to the Chaos God that you're devoted to. As this is a Tzeentchian region with very high corruption, we managed to get a cult very, very quickly. It's a possible ally in the future, they're literally neighbors too. Cults will be a fantastic way on how to earn extra Grimoires, which as you know is quite important. You can also generate some income with it, but I haven't really seen too much of a use to that, or you can increase the winds of magic in this province and in the provinces adjacent to it to a tempestuous way. This means loads of extra winds of magic to be able to do a lot of damage, especially as a Tzeentchian faction is going to be quite helpful. And a perfect example would be over here. You'll see I am in the lands of Cathay, I had defeated the Storm Dragon, and now I'm going for her capital of Nangao. The thing is that a bit of extra magic is going to be very, very helpful, as I will need to be able to cast a few more spells. Well, we do have another mechanic known as Winds of Magic Manipulation, where you can see we can start reducing Winds of Magic in a region that we're not fighting in. This is obviously in the Eastern Steppes where, well, there's nothing there. Nobody's going to come to attack us because we've been building up and we have another Tzeentchian faction there too. So what we can do is transfer those winds of magic to the Gunpowder Road, so we have a bit of extra winds. That means that we can cast more spells and so on. It will work with a +10 to winds of magic, which might not sound like a lot, but keep in mind that I have leveled a bit and I do have reduced winds of magic costs on some of my characters, so I'm going to be able to cast a lot more. Also, a very important note for your campaigns in the future: while blue horrors are quite strong, keep in mind that they are not built to be stackable. Yeah, they can be, and I did win this battle against a Cornate Force, which did hit me quite hard, but obviously having some spells, having a lot of range beforehand and so on does help. It's not the best. It's really not the best. I did take a lot of damage here. Mind you, this was a force that was pretty much just protecting the south, as the Khornite faction did get a little bit aggressive, and I had to start taking them out before they started growing too strong. This is what happens when you decide to have multiple wars and multiple fronts, as I'd already been dealing with Cathay at this point, and I decided, well, if I can start moving down south, I can meet up with Khorgarth and possibly have an alliance. Yeah, recruit better units than just the basics. They are very strong, and I am singing their praises in the roster video, which is coming out later, but don't expect them to be so much. This was early, and I got cocky. Another hero choice you have, which makes the Tzeentchian faction so very unique, is the Cultists of Zinge. Yes, it can summon in demons like all the others, and quite powerful demons at that, but it also has access to the Law of Fire. The Law of Fire, as we're all aware from Warhammer 1 and Warhammer 2, is a very powerful law of magic, and this means that you have access to 3 different laws of magic, which most other Chaos factions only have access to 2. Not counting the standard Warriors of Chaos, which aren't playable in-game yet, and obviously Demons of Undivided, which is just this massive cluster of everything. But that being said, it gives you some variety. It looks really cool too. I think that's the biggest thing about this, is just it looks awesome. But having different winds of magic is going to be quite useful. Being able to summon in a Lord of Change is very useful too. It's pretty good. Honestly, I've been surprised enough to use it a lot, despite the fact that it's not really got any good mobility barring a Chaos Steed, but it's still been enough to warrant having a few in my campaign running about in armies. So the Great Bastion itself can't be built upon. This is only for Cathayan factions. However, there is a very strong benefit as the Oracles of Tzeentch. You see, of course, you will get access to commandments here, and you can get the research rate plus 10%. There are 3 different gates, meaning that you can already get up to research rate plus 130 without too much trouble. All you have to do is really just fight your way through, and, well, this is Total War, so yeah, you're gonna have to fight anyway. So if you rather have the other commandments when it comes to your normal provinces, as you're just trying to stabilize them or use them to build up and so on, well, you've got the gates, and there's always one that's always ripe for the taking. Your heralds at rank 15, as you've seen with all the other heralds, have the chance of becoming an exalted version of their greater demon. This will pop up through a dilemma, which you can decide to either keep them as a herald permanently, change them into the exalted Lord of Change, or you can decide to just wait 10 turns to have some time to think. It very much depends on what your playstyle is. Keep in mind that the heralds are faster, but in terms of damage output, the Lords of Change are much better. It's, again, more on the player's type of preference. And it's obviously important to note, again, that if you decide to turn them into an exalted greater demon, then they will lose levels. So at rank 15, they'll go down to rank 7, 16, they'll go rank down to 8, and so on and so forth. So if you want to wait and get some higher levels, you can. It just depends on you. So as I said, they will lose access to the Locusts and their mounts, but as you can tell, stat-wise, they're going to be quite strong. They're going to be, well, much stronger than the Herald, because, you know, it's an exalted greater demon. And thankfully, you still keep all the traits that you picked up on the way, so that's going to be quite helpful. And yeah, I mean, still, it's a giant flying bird. Who doesn't want an angry turkey in their side? The only issue really is that if you decide to make them exalted too early like I have, you lose access to all the upkeep reduction, which you'll need to wait then until you can level up a little bit more. And if you're playing on harder difficulties, yeah, that does become a bit of an issue. Now, Kairos does have access to a unique weapon known as the Staff of Tomorrow, and as you can see, there's quite good benefits attached to it. You can pick that up as early as rank 10, however the fight itself isn't too easy, so I've had to wait a little bit, plus I was dealing with quite a lot of enemies that I didn't really want to take Kairos away at the moment and maybe get him injured. The enemy itself is Kairos Fateweaver. Yep, kinda strange, but hey, Tzeentch plays with the timelines, and this is from the same timeline, but is he your past or is he your future self? You will never know. Maybe you're the past, maybe you're the future. Let's not get confused now. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna see the intro cinematic to the actual battle and so on, and then I'm gonna give you some final thoughts regarding Kairos' campaign, as I've been able to play for a decent amount of time and get my bearings around it through multiple campaigns.
We remember this. We recall being you. You must relent. The staff is ours. We will not be blinded to fate by your petty context. Die, so we can calibrate real space and witness the vast fractals of existence once more. Minions, go forth. Sunder the inevitable.
So the weird thing is, obviously, we don't know if that was us talking, well, our Kairos or their Kairos, or they were just having a conversation between each other. It's very strange. Anyways, Kairos and the Tzeentch faction was very different. It's more baseline in terms of campaign playthrough, but so many side mechanics such as the changing of the ways, being able to manipulate the winds and so on are added in that it provides it to be quite different. So it's same but different. It's kind of odd to explain in a sense. Now, it's very heavily range focused, as you can see with my army here, as you're mostly focusing on different types of firepower and loads of magic. If you're looking for magic heavy and range heavy, but also with some support and so on, it's very interesting. That's the best way I can say it, I think, at this point. You're going to be fighting for multiple times, you're going to be tanky yet weak. There is so much that goes into Tzeentch, which is a true representation of how they were on the tabletop, mind you. The barrier itself acts as the ward save, though eventually it does run out and you'll need to recharge it. You have loads and loads of magic. In fact, with more creatures, the more magic you can have and so on. Now, surprisingly, because of the mix of the rosters, they do become quite strong in terms of melee, soul grinders, doom knights and so on. So I'd say it's balanced but skewing more towards range and magic. There is still a heavy focus on melee and you're more than capable of doing that. Expansion is quite normal. I think that this one's more relaxed when it comes to expanding, whereas Nurgle was slower and Khorne is obviously much faster if you get the corruption proc. This faction was probably one of the harder ones to get used to, at least from my own experience, and I have played a few different campaigns through multiple difficulties and obviously through a This Is Total War just to have some fun. However, I will say it's very satisfying, especially if you can get so many winds of magic that you're just doing so much damage to your enemy that they can't even touch you. It's definitely different, and as I've said in the previous videos, you can really tell that Creative Assembly are trying to go full ham on this. But what do you guys think about the Tzeentch faction? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and let's start a bit of a discussion. I'm rather curious to see what you guys think about this, as I know there's a lot of Tzeentch fans here. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various links to different social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Discord. Also in the description section is an affiliate link with Element Games, where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using that link and also our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to Gibraltar LUSC, Ryan Bertsche, Andrew Prince, and Okro for subscribing to us at our Fane level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule, VS Vasan, Aaron Whitman, and Shaggy for subscribing to us at our King level. Honestly, we can't thank you all enough. And lastly, a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing, and commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's because of you guys that the channel's been growing at such a great pace lately, so we can't thank you all enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very soon. Have a good day.